Hi there, Prairie Plant Girl here. Today I'm going to be planting my Angelonia seeds. These are seeds that I collected off of my Angelonia plants from last year. So I went out in the fall when the seed pods had dried up and collected a few seeds. Now the seed pods are a pretty good size. I have some cracked open here on the table because I was just emptying them out. But the seeds themselves are extremely tiny. So this is going to be another one of those projects where I am utilizing a skewer and just a little dish with a tiny bit of water in it just to wet my skewer to try and lift these teeny tiny little seeds and get them into these trays here. Now, it doesn't look like much in here, but I think I'll have enough to get 24 seeds planted here. I did not do a germination test on the Angelonia, so I'm not sure how they're going to turn out, but I'm going to give them a try and hopefully they'll work out. So I can't remember now already if I mentioned, but this was the Serena Mix that I planted last year. This is the seeds collected off of it. So the flowers won't come true from color of what I collected. So I just collected random colors. And anywhere that I look online says to sow your Angelonia seeds, I think it's 8 to 10 weeks before your average last frost date. My seed pack says to plant them 12 to 14 weeks before your average last frost. So I'm going to be planting them today, and I might wind up with some pretty good sized plants. Now last year it seems to me they were 4 to 6 inches tall, but not huge plants when I planted them out, and I'm sure I planted them according to the package directions. So I'm just going to do the same thing again this year. It seems like it worked well for me last year. Hopefully these seeds have a decent germination rate and I get some good flowers out of them. So Angelonia seeds need light to germinate. So once I get them planted up here, then I will just be putting them with a little small layer of vermiculite on them and then under my plant lights, my grow lights on my plant shelf. So conveniently I've been picking up about 2 seeds. Oops, it's picking up all the peat moss. About 2 seeds every time I go in. So I'm just putting 2 seeds into the tray. So I'm just going to try and keep going through and hopefully get 2 seeds into each of these little cells here. And hopefully then I get 1 to germinate. I thought I had this medium fairly moist, but it doesn't seem like it is. So before I do the next tray, I'm going to give it a little spray down because that'll help keep this peat moss mix here is really wanting to attach to my skewer when I put the seeds down. Just a little irritating, but not a big deal. It's just some of the seeds might be getting scraped off on the edge and I'm trying to scrape some of that excess peat moss off. So I'm just using, like I said, peat moss in these trays. This is a pre-packaged mix that I buy, and it's basically peat moss. Peat moss is fairly acidic, and so it just has some lime added and a little bit of, I think, perlite, if I remember from what I'd read, for this particular mix. So it's just added in. The lime helps to buffer that acidity in the peat moss, and then the perlite would just be to help with drainage a little bit. So that's all that's in here, and it's just a nice mixture for me. It's not a special seed starting mix. It's just the peat moss growers mix that I pick up in big bales. Unfortunately, the store I always buy them from is closing down, so I'm not sure what I'm going to do for the next season. I'm going to have to find somewhere else that sells them like this. But this is just vermiculite, and like I said, these seeds want light to germinate, but this vermiculite kind of bounces and reflects the light around. It doesn't seem to affect the plants that need light to germinate. So it does a nice job of regulating the moisture on the top of the soils. It can absorb excess moisture, let off a little if the soil dries out a little bit, or the peat moss. And just that helps with things like damping off, fungus gnats, issues like that. So I finally remembered to get my sprayer and bring it in from the greenhouse. Now, I did break the hose on it because there was a chunk of ice in it when I tried to put the spray top on. But I super glued it, and so far it's working. So hopefully I get at least one more season out of it. So I just sprayed that down well. I'll probably actually put just a little bit of water in the bottom of this tray to help that soak up a bit more water from the bottom, just because it did seem like maybe the peat moss wasn't as damp as I thought it was. So I'm going to wet this one down just a little more, just so hopefully it doesn't stick so much to that skewer when I'm putting the seeds down. You want your potting medium to be damp enough so that when you grab it in a handful, you just kind of squeeze it. You might get 1 or 2 drips of moisture coming out of it, but no more than that. And when you let go, it'll kind of hold its shape, but you can easily just kind of poke it and it'll fall apart again. That's kind of a good guide for knowing if you have enough moisture. Now, obviously I didn't test mine. I just eyeballed it, and obviously I was wrong. So get a little damper and go from there. So I would have done about 2 dozen seeds in that last tray, and honestly it looks like I haven't even taken any out of here. Let's say I have at least 2 dozen more in here. Angelonia, a really nice flower. They're sometimes referred to as like a summer snapdragon or a warm season snapdragon, because they have a similar look to snapdragons. Their flowers aren't hinged. Did I do this one? You let me know in the comments if I did that twice. They aren't hinged like a snapdragon flower is, so the two kind of lips or sections are fused together, so you can't get that same kind of fun opening, closing the mouth when you squeeze them like a snapdragon, but they still have a similar look to a snapdragon, and they perform best in warm weather, whereas a snapdragon likes the cooler weather. So often my snaps are looking really good in the spring and again in the fall, but kind of have a lull during the heat of the summer. The Angelonia will pick up that lull and go really nice through the summer for me. Here in Saskatchewan, Canada, we don't have quite the same heat levels as some of you will have further south. So a lot of times my snaps and my Angelonia are both kind of blooming really nicely together. The Angelonia are also that spiky kind of flower form that the snapdragon has to it, you know, instead of a big, like a disc or something, it's a stem that goes straight up with several flowers coming off the sides of it. So it gives you that different shape that's nice to have in bouquets, and just in the garden kind of breaks up the landscape a little bit. So that's what I really like about them. It's always nice to have a variety of flower shapes and styles for just pleasant to the eye in the landscape, and nice if you like to make bouquets. And they do work fairly well in a bouquet. You can use them just in the general landscape in flower beds. They also work well in flower pots and hanging baskets, but they don't like to dry out. So that's something that you really have to pay attention to, especially if you're planting them in like a hanging basket, which can dry out more. Then you want to make sure that you're keeping it on a drip or regular watering schedule that's not going to let them dry out on you. So they won't appreciate that. Otherwise, they're pretty easygoing flowers. I don't do a ton of fertilizing in my flowers that are right in the garden beds. I do fertilize my pots and hanging baskets regularly. So they didn't seem to perform much differently in those two situations, being one that was fertilized very regularly and one that wasn't really at all. So, having a little trouble with my sprayer. It didn't like being out in the winter, I don't think. So let's see what we can get out of here. To be a real shame because I can't find this sprayer anymore. I really like it. Now I did make tags for these, so we'll pop those in. And I did make a note on the tag that they were from Safe Seed, just in case I noticed anything different about them, just so I remember that's what they are. So now I just need to pop the lids on. I'm going to close the domes up so there's no ventilation right now to help keep that moisture in, and put them on my grow shelf under lights, and then I'll just be keeping an eye on them. I can't remember how long it took for them to sprout last year. I'll look back through my journal. Sometimes I have good notes on things like that. Sometimes I just don't, especially as you get into the busy season. Sometimes my note keeping isn't as great as it could be. Other than that, the thing you need to know, I guess I don't think I said, is they're a full sun plant. So the sunnier the spot, the happier they'll be. They like the warmth. So that's all there is to sowing the Angelonia. So like I said, this is when I'm sowing mine. You might find contradictory information online, because I certainly did. But this is what's worked well for me in the past, so that's what I'm going to do again. Let me know if you grow Angelonia. Do you sow it a little bit closer to your average last frost date, or are you starting it earlier like myself? Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye.